Craig, welcome to Open Mic.
Mike?
The legendary Kevin Bartlett says you are the most influential man in Australian football. Is he on the money?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Tell us what you do. I mean, I know you're the CEO of Elite Sports Properties. What's that mean?
Well, it's to manage. We've got an office in London, Sydney, Adelaide, here. We're about to open an office in Perth. We've got 50-odd staff. So my job is, as most people, the CEO, I have to run, and most of the time I spend managing the staff. But I do still look after the key talent that have been mates for mine for a long time, mate. Like, you know, Lyon, Crawford, Brown.
What are the origins of ESP?
Well, it started when I was playing and Rob was still finishing his swimming, Rob Woodhouse. And Ricky had just started Club 10, and I went to Gubby Allen and said to him, I'd love to start a management company or marketing company for players. And I'd like you to provide me with an office. I'd like you to provide me with a girl to write my emails and do my letters. And he said, "You're an idiot, it won't work." And with Jeff Brown and a number of other guys, Ross Oakley and the guys started Pro Squad, and they asked me, and clearly there's some heavy lobbying going from behind the scenes with those guys, because they asked me to set that up and basically go head to head with Ricky with Club 10, and that's where we started looking after and managing some of the guys like Silvani and Buckley and Billy and all those guys, and it was like everyone said, it was what did Ricky used to call it, the flog squad. So we had the flog squad at Club 10 with Dunstall, and seriously, Club 10 had some amazing guys in it, and it was just to combat their position, and so the AFL could still look after their partners. Then clearly the whole thing just came together.
How many footballers have you got on your books?
We've got about 160 odd now. We're trying to build that up, want to build that to 200. We think that's about the right number with the right number of managers. So we've got about 8 or so guys that manage that all around the country. We think that between 30 and 40 players per manager is about the right number you can service properly and make sure you've got a team behind you.
Tell us about how it works. I mean, my understanding is I think that you take 3% of a player's contract and a higher percentage of their marketing money. Is that?
Well, it's a bit high now. The playing contracts of AFL contracts, the first couple of years are basically for nothing, because there's not a lot you can do when the guys get drafted. It's a set agreement pretty much, although there's a lot of work that goes in those first 2 years looking after the kids. What people don't understand is there's families involved who, when they're moving, mothers don't really want them to go, and so you're a conduit between the club, the player and the family. You're also helping the player understand you can actually say this to the coach or talk to your teammates, or if you're comfortable where you're living. There's a lot of little things that people say, oh, you don't really need the manager in the first 2 years. It's absolute load of rubbish, and we get really annoyed with people out there who say, and especially local TAC clubs saying, oh, you don't really need a manager in the first year, which is just rubbish, because not only now with the issues with Gold Coast and also Western Sydney, there's so much going on in their own lives. They're going through their VCE, they're finishing year 12, they've got, they might have issues at home with the parents may not be getting on, they might be crook, they might have hurt their knee. So the most important time is getting them into the system. So that's why I get filthy with so-called footy experts who look after the kids. I mean, it's just ridiculous. To think that we haven't got the best interest in young people at heart is just a load of rubbish.
Let's go back to the start. Your father played for Port Adelaide. I must say you strike me more as a Norwood boy than a Port boy. Yeah. But wouldn't there, I mean, people who grew up in Port Adelaide families, isn't that part of their tradition, their culture?
Yeah, absolutely. And my dad was fantastic, and I always remember him saying, and because Port approached me, I was in college down at a college called Prince Alfred College, and it's a fantastic school. I was a boarder there from the country, and I had Port Adelaide didn't contact me when I was sort of playing OK school footy. Sturt Football Club under Jeff Motley, who was great mates with Dad, and he suggested I come out. Pete was playing some fantastic footy at that stage at Sturt, come out and see them. North Adelaide got hold of me through, because we were in the northern part of South Australia, so I went and trained with them. And Port never rang me and never said anything. Dad said, it's a reflection on their current administration, which was pretty poor at that stage. You need to go and make a decision to go to the best possible club with the best possible president and person running the club with the best coach. you make the decision. I'll come with you, but it's your decision. So we went and saw those clubs. We sat down with Jeff Motley and Port. Then all of a sudden said, "Oh, we better come down and train." I went down there and trained, and it was very unimpressive and training, and also the club at that stage. And Nord and Sturt were by far the better run clubs, and I just loved Wally Miller and Neil Baum. Just as soon as I met them, I just thought, oh, they're just ripping blokes.
You played 120 games at Norwood under Neil Baum. That's 6 full seasons in the domestic competition.
Yeah.
Was it the right way to go?
Yeah, for me it was, because I was never. I played against Kernahan and then obviously Bradley was around that era. So was Peter Motley and all those guys, and McGuinness's, and there's some amazing players in the SNFL. Gary McIntosh, Michael H. I would love to have seen Gary McIntosh come over and play Victorian football at the VFL. We would have just been a star.
And play on diesel.
I remember
week.
that state game when he just bashed it. He came. I had a party that night back at my place, and we're all watching the game, and we watched him, and he's just gone bang, and they bang hit each other. And he came into the party, and he's gone smiled. He'd lost his tooth, just threw it on the ground, and then kept drinking. Mate, he was mad. He was amazing guy.
You played 122 games for Collingwood, which is in numerical terms isn't massive, but
no.
You were part of that sort of immortal 1990 premiership team. Yeah. Look back on your career and tell us what it means to you.
Well, I remember I missed a season through suspension, so I missed about 20 games.
And that was unders.
Yeah, I know. I'd hate to do the Mark Bayes thing again now. I wonder what some stupid things. I did have the tendency, Mike, as you might remember, to have a bit of brain fade when I went over that white line. I and also did my knee. I wish I hadn't done my knee. Everyone says that, but I thought in 91, coming off the flag, we were still a good side. 92, we were really up and going, and that was my most. It all clicked into place for me then, and I worked my backside off, and I was flying, and I was really enjoying my centre half back, and the team was really gelling well again. And if you remember, that was the year I did my knee halfway through about June over at Subiaco, and we were still going well. And we ended up, it was the first year of that year and next year, the 8 and the 6 were all moving around. There was a couple of years there where we finished in the top 2 or 3, lose a game by 12 points against St Kilda, and we're out.
Yep.
And it was just sort of, wasn't all right, it wasn't fair. And yet that was probably our next, that was still the window where we could have had a bit more success. Whether or not you do, you don't know. And I personally felt like I was in a really good space in that 92 season, did my knee, and then really after that, I think it was just a battle for me to really just stay with it.
You seem to celebrate forever after 1990. People say it's the longest premiership hangover in history, was it?
Spot on. It was unbelievable. Well, we got, remember we because of the draw, it pushed everything back a week, and we ended up having the grand final, went all the way straight through to that. The Copeland Trophy was on the Wednesday, kept going, got on a plane, kept going, flew to London, played against Sheedy's mob, Banks, Kelly, Christian, Krasiska, Mullane. We didn't go to bed that night. Got up in the morning, had to play a game of footy on national TV back to Australia. And I remember turning around at one stage. So I turned around, we're on the bench, we're on the boundary, and we didn't know, the cameras, we sort of were over it, and Sheedy in the meantime had been quite upset with the fact that he'd taken all his guys to bed early and they were all very serious about beating us. And there was a shot of Mullane, myself and Banksy talking to these 3 lovely ladies sitting on the other side of the fence watching the game, and we get, because Lee wasn't coaching us, Lee Adamson was, and a message comes down and says, "One of you blokes have to go on." He said, "Well, none of us are going on." Apparently I got the short straw because I was the youngest, so as I went over onto the field, I fell over, and it was quite embarrassing, Mike. But and Sheedy was very upset with his team. Apparently he said, "You've been beaten for the second time by a pack of drunks," so which we were.
You were one of several players reported at quarter time in the 1990 grand final, Craig. What was your part in it?
No, that was Dennis Banks' fault. and he got hit by Kieran Spawn, which was quite amazing in itself. But I remember turning around on the wing and looking and seeing Spawny hit Banksy. I thought, crikey, he's game. Anyway, I thought I'd better run in, so I ran in and tried to help Banksy, which he hardly needed any help. And then all hell broke loose.
How did you try to help him?
I think I tried to hit Kieran as hard as I could. I think I got him a little bit. Well, there's a great photo and we look after Longy now. There's a great photo in my office, and all you can see is my little 23, and there's about 8 blokes all on me trying to beat the living suitcases out of me. So it was good, and then people were running for it. It was a great blue. It was a great blue.
Let's stay on the so-called violence on the field. I'll give you a couple of names to reflect upon. Mark Bays and Ben Doolan.
Yeah, that wasn't. That was pretty agricultural. The Basie, poor old Basie. I mean, that was my simplistic view of trying to win a game of football. Was if they were in front of me and they had the ball, I was going to punch whatever I could, and I just round arm tactics, and it was average and thuggery that shouldn't be allowed and isn't allowed anymore. And then certainly the Doolan one. In fairness to me on that one, I did raise the elbow, but he didn't have a mouthguard in as well.
Oh, so, sorry, will you forgive me?
If you have a mouthguard, would have. And I said to him at that point when he went down, I said, mate, you should have been wearing a mouthguard. But seriously, I mean, you should always wear a mouthguard. And I did. I said, but it was still very crude lifting the elbow. And my wife was very embarrassed that day, though, Mike. She wasn't my wife at that stage. She was there for the first time, and she got up and walked out in disgust. But it didn't go down too well with our relationship.
How's the Buckley-Malthouse relationship going?
Nathan's very clear and understands his role that he's playing for the next couple of years, and he's very comfortable with that. People may think he's not. I mean, as an alpha male type personality, both of them, one of them has to take the back seat, and that's Nathan's role. He's comfortable with that. He's learning a lot. He's also preparing himself to learn things he'd do differently and approach things differently to what Mick does. That's part of management. The great thing about both those situations is that you think about it, a senior coach comes into a club for the first time in October when they've been appointed. They've got nothing to do with that next 12 months in relation to list and personnel around the club. It's near impossible to do anything unless you've been there for 12 months. The opportunity exists for Nathan to be working with the management of the Collingwood Footy Club, with Mick, to set up what they see the future being for the next 10, 15 years. It's unique, and it should be the way management, and you hand over any form of management from a business or a footy club, because then you keep the good parts and you change some things, and you can work on lists, you can work on personnel, you can work on how you want to do things. But currently he's got a role to play, and he's head down, bottom up, working, not saying anything because he's an assistant coach and he's not his place to say anything.
After the break, Craig Kelly speaks openly about the Darren Mullane tragedy, the Collingwood presidency, and a strange phase he went through, pinching. Now you can solve one of football's great mysteries, Ned. How much money did Terry Wallace get to stand aside from the Sydney coaching job?
I wondered when that question comes up. It comes all the time. Why do people think that?
Well, because we believe it to be true.
Okay, well then, it's a good question.
Okay, let me redefine the question. Was Terry Wallace paid any money to step away from the Sydney coaching job?
No, he wasn't paid any money. He never coach the Sydney Football Club. We did have discussions with the Sydney Football Club, as you know, in relation to going up to Sydney and being a coach, and then clearly all hell broke loose. I've said publicly that it should have been managed a lot better from a number of parties, me included, the Sydney Football Club, and also Terry. So he never signed a contract with the Sydney Football Club, and in relation to money side of things, well, I don't know why you'd be getting paid money if you didn't sign a contract.
So no money came from the Sydney Football Club or a benefactor of the Sydney Football Club?
No money came from the Sydney Football Club.
Or a benefactor of the Sydney Football Club?
I don't know. I don't know in relation to other people who've been involved in the football club would be paying Terry. Why would they be doing that?
Well, let me put. This is the last go I'll have, but.
It's find it fascinating. Why is it such an interest to so many people, whether or not people get paid money from whatever they do in life. I don't quite understand why this is of such interest to people. They keep bringing it up every time Terry appears in. I just don't understand why it just keeps coming up.
Well, the popular view was within the industry that Plough was being paid a significant amount of money, as much as $800,000, to step away from this job by someone who was a friend of the Sydney Football Club.
No, well, that's just no.
Now, we all know that you want to be the next Collingwood president. When
you keep saying that.
When are you going to make your run?
This is. I would love I owe the Collingwood Football Club so much. It is giving me every opportunity in this town and in this industry. One day I will go back and do whatever I've got to do. I continue to support the football club. While I've got this business, you tell me, while I've got this business, how much fun would you and your paper and everyone have if, let's say, I'm now at the Collingwood Footy Club and we're doing Nathan Buckley's deal last year. I'm president of the football club and I'm also here at ESP.
Okay, good point.
So I don't think I can. I would love to at some stage be involved in supporting, and if that's on the board of the Collingwood Football Club because people think I can offer a value to that, I'd love to be on the Collingwood Footy Club board. If you are then appointed to be a president of the football club, fantastic, so long as you've got the right attitude and you're doing the right thing by the club, not a problem. But that at the moment can't be while I've got this business or involved in this business. You guys would just have a field day, unless you promise to sign an agreement saying we won't ever talk about it.
Would you be prepared, and I'm talking short to medium term, would you be prepared to divest yourself of ESP to be the Collingwood president?
Yeah, at some stage I'd love to do that. So at some stage I'd love to, at the appropriate family time, when the three boys are through and sick of me, which may be not too far down the track, when this organisation's got the right succession plan in place, and if the people within the Collingwood Footy Club see it as a benefit to me, I'd love to go back and do my dues because I owe it plenty.
What about the pinching phase of your career, Craig?
Yeah,
I mean, there was a story that Sav Rocker thought you'd lost your edge.
Absolutely thought I'd lost my edge.
Yeah,
and I had, and we'd lost under first part of the year, lost 5 or 6 games in a row or something. So I had the big, let's sit around and look at each other in the eye and saying what we think of each other. So I went around and Sav looked at me and said, "You've lost your edge. Not enough mongrel in you anymore." So okay. So we then had a practice match that night at training. So I played on Sav, so I started pinching him. Just I don't know why I started pinching him. I started pinching him, just under the belly there. There's a fair bit of Sav to pinch there, and he got really upset with me. Sav did. I thought, oh, this works all right. So that weekend we played Geelong at the MCG, and I was playing on David Mensch, who I now coach at Mansfield, and also Billy. And Billy was a client for us at that stage. We'd started Pro Squad. So I started pinching them, and Menchie was filthy on me, but he didn't do anything. So I just kept pinching him, and then Billy came on. He said, "Nev, what are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, it's annoying, isn't it?" He said, "It's driving me mad." And so the last few minutes, I got dragged down and put on Ablett, and I pinched him once, and he nearly put me into the back of the grandstand. I kept doing that, and then he gave away 50 metres because of it. We go down, kick a goal, win the game, and Gary wouldn't shake my hand, and that's in his book. He talks about lack of respect of some people, and I think I'm on top of the list. So I apologise, Gary. It was a pretty low thing to do. Wasn't the highlight.
Now, you didn't dare try that tactic on our own Jason Dunstall, did you?
We played Hawthorn on a Friday night, and I started pinching him, and first half of the game he only kicked 1 goal, and he's really angry with me because normally Jace just didn't talk, just kicked about 20 goals on us. Each person went on to him. So half time I'm going to the rooms and everyone's going, "Oh, well done, Ned, you kept in 1 goal, blah blah blah," and then came out at half time and he didn't say a thing. I kept pinching him, didn't do anything. I thought, oh, here we go. And he kicked 6 in the second half and almost won the game for them.
Now, you played on some massive names in football history. Does one stand out above the rest?
Most of my career was centre-half back. I mean, it was only the last little bit when I was struggling that I went down the full-back. But, I mean, Kernahan to me, and I suppose it's the South Australian, I remember playing sticks when I'd first started playing for Nord, and he'd been playing for Glenelg for a few years, and he just towered me up down at the Bay. I suppose that was one of my first games, so it was always a challenge for me to play against Sticks and want to beat him. And I love the game. There's a game we played, Collingwood Carlton at Waverley, when it was just, we were both in full flight, and it was like 20-odd thousand more than should have been in the ground, sort of in the laneways and everything. And I played a really good game against Sticks, and we became great mates. Well, not great mates, but you know, he was part of Pro Squad, and we often see each other now, have a few beers, and I always had utmost respect for him, and I thought he was just a wonderful player, being able to turn the game around, and I think a true centre-half forward, because he played that role. Dermy was more that sort of running before that was sort of in existence. He just run you around like a crazy man, but Sticks really played that true centre-half forward role. So I'd rate them all. I mean, Dunstall, Lockett, Kernahan, Brereton. I mean, you just don't hear names like. I mean, there's great players going around now, but not just forwards like that. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Tell us about Darren Mullane and the sad end to what was going to be a great AFL career.
It was just such a tragic thing to happen to someone so young.
What did it mean to you when the impact of that death, that accident, sunk in with you? Did you learn anything from it?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I mean, I did personally. I mean, I was just starting to see my wife Meredith, and Darren and I wasn't going out as much as I probably had been, and it probably to me just said, right, that's it. The time I knuckled down. I mean, not that I was out of control, but I also wanted to settle down, get married. I wanted to have a successful business. I wanted to know what I was going to do after footy, because clearly my footy career wasn't going to be as long as others, and I suppose I just went bang. And got into it.
Mullane outside 50. Cornered by Ugle. Gets around Ugle and Wilson. Mullane for goal. A sensational kick.
Darren Mullane was an inspiration in the 1990 final series. Where does he sit with Dacos and the great Collingwood players of that time?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the footage and all that, it was just it wasn't a pretty style. I mean, his kicking and his, compared to this era now where it looks silky smooth, he was just a bull. I mean, the Raging Bull was one of his nicknames, and he really was. He used to smash through back, but playing that role on that wing was such an important role for him to play, and he could close down and play on anyone. So where Dakes was still, in regard to freakish, Darren was just bulldozerish, if you like to say it like that. He just got it, bang, smash, crash, but deliver it as well. But it always looked a bit awkward to me. When you look at the vision, it looks quite awkward.
We kick to the fat side. I mean, if a switch is on, but it's only back this part of the ground, guys. It's back this part of the ground. Look for the quick.
You're a premiership player and you're a premiership coach. Mansfield winning the flag in 2009. Why are you coaching Mansfield?
Yeah.
And what do you get out of it?
Coaching at Mansfield's given me the ability to have highs and lows that you get from football. A high and a low. Every week you get an outcome, and those that haven't been in team sport, or those that haven't coached a side or played, the thrill of winning at any level, be it amateurs with when I played with Xavier to the Collingwood Footy Club to work. You just don't get it from work. You just don't get that high and that low straight away. You don't get a result every weekend. Whereas every weekend I know that I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be really annoyed, or I'm going to be sort of saying, actually it wasn't too bad, we lost, but now I can see a way out of where we're going. You don't get that in life. You don't get that in work, and that's what those highs and lows you love. It's a drug. It really is. It's sort of, you get involved in it and you're passionate about it and you love it. I just love it.
When will this side learn to yell and communicate?
If in the next few years I have a massive coronary on the bench at the Mansfield Footy Club, just make sure we play this to say that, you know, I enjoyed my time and I've gone as I want to go.
It's been great fun trawling through 20 years, Ned. Thanks for your time.
Mike Parkinson, it's been a pleasure. Well done.
Fox Sports presentation.